Good afternoon. I am Heather Hummel, here visiting from Carmel Valley Village, where I've been living for about 2 years. I moved here from Charlottesville, Virginia, and where I lived for 11 years. And I am a self-proclaimed photonovelist. I got back into photography about almost 6 months ago, after taking a hiatus from it for a little while. And I am also a novelist, so I thought the combination of being a photonovelist was pretty unique, because you hear about photojournalists who of course go out and photograph all the negative news stories and doom and gloom, and that's just not my style. So I'm like, well, if I'm not a photojournalist, which is what I thought I wanted to be back in high school, I'll be a photonovelist because I write novels and I do photography. So a friend of mine believes that I need to trademark the photonovelist thing. So I'm starting to look into that. But the two words obviously combine my two, I'll say talents, but really they're my creative outlets. How did I become a photonovelist is what a lot of people want to know. How did you become an author? How did you get into photography? When I was a senior in high school many moons ago, my three favorite classes were English, photography, and oceanography. Believe it or not, I took a really cool class in oceanography back in my senior year of high school. And fast forward a couple decades or so, and here I am living in California, taking pictures of the beach and writing books. So when people are stumbling on what they want to do in life when they're in their 40s or 50s, I'll say to them, well, what did you love in high school? What were your favorite classes back in high school? And some of them have to really stop and think about that. And I've been told that I'm very lucky that I know what I want to do, I know what I want to be. A lot of people have a hard time really tapping into themselves to decide what they want to do in life. So I've always known that I wanted to be a writer, and I always wanted to be a photographer, so that wasn't too hard of a decision for me. I didn't have to do a lot of soul searching. But that didn't mean that obstacles didn't come along. So when I was in high school and I wanted to be a photojournalist, I actually wanted to go to the Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara, and I'm like, well, I'm a writer, I have the writing thing down, I'll go to Brooks and fine-tune my photography, and I'll come out and be a photojournalist. So I told my parents this was my plan, and they said, no way, you're not going to make money as a writer. So disheartened and not a lot of gumption at 17, I went off to a 4-year college in Florida and hated every second of it. So from there, I went on to be an office manager and worked in a couple photography stores. I did a lot of labs. I worked on one of those, remember when the 1-hour photography first came out and they had those big new Zitsu machines? I was trained by one of the best guys in Connecticut on those machines. So I still did photography to some degree, and I was taking English classes, here and there. I went to college for 2 years, the one in Florida, and really was not happy. And my boyfriend that I met there graduated, so he and I moved to Connecticut. And I just kind of found different ways to keep photography and writing in my life. But I was working, a regular day job, working in a photography store, not as a photographer. And then eventually I became an office manager. And I say sucked. I sucked at it, pardon my pseudo-French. I just admitted that I was not very good at it, but it paid the bills and got me through, and it was something that my parents can say, oh yeah, my daughter's an office manager, isn't that nice? So, and I do have 5 siblings, and we all do very different things, but that began to really drain my soul. I go into an office every day, reporting to people every day, being accountable to other people was really not what I was meant to do, and it really sucked at my soul, and I felt starved of life, which I know a lot of people in the wrong career does, and that's the first sign that you're not doing what you're meant to be doing. So about 8 years ago, I went through a spiritual awakening. And I even hesitate to use the word awakening because that implies that it was a process, when really it was an overnight, flip me upside my head, smack me around, you're awakened now. It was not a process with the ing verb of awakening. And through that, I began to explore a lot of different spiritual avenues. And I think for those of us who are spiritually awakened or spiritually in tune, we all use different tools. For example, some people might go to mediums. Some people might know how to connect with their own spirit guides and angels. Some people might be on the psychic hotline every time something tragic happens, which I'll say I haven't called a psychic hotline, but I've used psychics before. Some people might use meditation. So everybody kind of, when you become spiritually awakened, you find kind of what works for you to help you through it. And when you're spiritually awakened, it's so hard to see how you were before. It's hard to connect with that person again. So you end up finding new ways to connect with resources. And one of my best ways for connecting is actually through journal writing, which makes sense because I'm a writer. I've been journal writing ever since middle school. I just didn't realize all those years the impact that journal writing was having on my life in terms of the law of attraction. We all know the law of attraction is you manifest what you think, believe, feel, speak. And so with the journal writing that I've been doing over the years, like a lot of women and even men, journal writing was a place to vent. It was a private place that you could go and complain about the date you had last night, complain about your boss, but most people use it for venting. Once I was spiritually awakened, I realized that I was continuing to manifest these negative experiences because I kept journal writing them. And like, if you go back and read your journal from a year ago and you had a really bad date, and then you read it the night after you had another bad date, it's like, you start to make the connections when you're awakened to see these things. So I had the idea to start, I saw The Secret, and who did it back then, and I realized how much journal writing, especially for me as a writer, was creating things in my life. So I went out and bought a positive journal and only started writing positive things. At the same time, my mother had been discovered by a Hollywood producer and became a model at the age of 65 years old. And the Monterey Herald ran an article on her that hit the wires all around the country. And she started getting emails from people, inspirational emails, that they were all inspired by her story. So she called me one day and was reading me one of the letters that she got, and I said, I think maybe we should do a book on this. And I had already been researching how to find an agent and a publisher and all that. So what I started doing every night was journal writing. Besides writing her book proposal and getting everything prepared and researching the right agent for us, I started journaling every night. I'm so grateful for my agent. I'm so grateful for my agent. 2 weeks later, we landed an agent. Then I started journal writing. I'm so grateful for our publisher, because the agent now has to sell the book to us. I'm so grateful for our publisher. So we signed with our agent in November. By March, we signed with McGraw-Hill. So that was when I really first realized that the journal writing is a really powerful tool. And if you look at all the other spiritual authors out there who were writing books on the law of attraction, like everybody from The Secret wrote one, and then a lot of all the Hay House authors were writing their books on it. I had the idea to showcase the law of attraction, especially journal writing, through a novel. I had already written my first novel, Whispers from the Heart, before I was awakened, when I was still a high school English teacher. And this is about a high school English teacher who incorporates journal writing into her classroom with the students as they helps them to cope with the death of a fellow student who commits suicide. So I had already used journal writing and Whispers from the Heart before I was awakened or anything else. So when I went to write the sequel to this book, which is Right from the Heart, I wanted to do a fictional tale of the law of attraction. So the main character, Samantha, uses journal writing very much like I just described. She realized how much negativity she had been putting into her journal writing over the years. And she goes out and buys a positive journal and starts writing affirmations. And eventually her life turns around and she starts to see the difference that the changes through the journal writing are making in her life. So through that, I then made the two of these books, which weren't originally a series, but with the connection of journal writing, it became a series called Journals from the Heart. And I'm now actually working on the third of the book, called Wisdom from the Heart, which is about a 14-year-old who finds out she's adopted. And it alternates chapters between her being 14 and her in her 30s, and how she dealt with the adoption through the use of journal writing. So when most people think of a series, they like to see a particular character in every book. And for my series, it's not so much a character as it is the tool of journal writing. And it's shown in 3 different ways, from a teacher to a single woman to a young girl who finds out that she's adopted. So the power of the pen is something I can't emphasize enough. It's like you're really making a written contract with the universe when you're journal writing. So I've taught many journal writing classes, both online and in person, and a lot of people are afraid of the blank page and a pen, and they're not quite sure, if they're not comfortable with it, how to express their feelings in writing. They might be able to sit down with you over coffee and, say everything they want, but if they went to write it down, they wouldn't know how to express it. It's like there's a roadblock right at their elbow and the words can't get past there. So what I teach people in my journal writing classes are to use affirmations. So you're not necessarily jotting down your feelings, you're affirming what you would want, like I did with, I'm so grateful for my agent, I'm so grateful for my publisher. You use affirmations and write those a few times a day. And even just commit to doing one affirmation every day until it comes true, or until there's some major sign or realization that that's not maybe the right affirmation for you. But doing affirmations in a form of journal writing is a really great way to start, just getting used to writing things down. The other thing that I'm a big proponent of, if you're not comfortable with writing, a lot of people, including me, are also very visual. So I have created more vision boards. If you're not familiar with a vision board, it's essentially a collage. And this is one that I created about 4 years ago. When I was still living in Virginia, I came out here to do a photo shoot with my mother for our book. And while I was here, I picked up a magazine that had a lot of California stuff, because I knew I wanted to move back here. So I picked up a magazine, and I went home and I created a lifestyle vision board. So I went to pick up this board the other day, and I realized that a lot of these things have come true. I actually got a bracelet for Christmas almost identical to this one a couple years ago, and it was made by Coach, so that was on there. And the most uncanny thing on this vision board is this picture right here of the double rainbow. I cut that out of a magazine, and for whatever reason I was attracted to it. There it is on the vision board. And can you guys see that? Well, see the picture of the double rainbow? Now feel free to pass this around too if you want. And now I'm going to show you a picture that I took on my iPhone last fall. Once you've seen the picture of the double rainbow on there, that's a picture I took last fall out in Carmel Valley. Almost identical to the one that I put on my vision board. So in terms of manifestation and manifesting things that we want in our life, both the visual, such as a vision board, or journal writing, really have a lot of power. I mean, that double rainbow picture was just something I thought was neat. Did I know that 2 years later I would be taking an image, a picture on my iPhone of almost the identical picture? No. And that's really the beauty of journal writing and doing vision boards, is that you never know what's going to come true on them. You never know what you're going to write in a journal that's actually going to come to fruition a week later, a month later, a year later, and sometimes even 10 years later. Same thing with the vision board. You never know what you're going to cut out and paste on there that's going to come true down the road. One of the reasons I really like doing vision boards is that a lot of energy and creativity go into them. You can play your favorite music while you're doing it. I can't play music while I'm writing. I get too distracted. But with the vision board, you're putting a lot of focus and energy into the images that you want to cut out. You're taking the time to cut out. You're putting a lot of passion and effort into it. And that's why I think that they can be extremely powerful. So if you're looking for a different way of finding ways to manifest and use the law of attraction, vision boards are a really great tool just for that, especially if you're not comfortable with journal writing. So those are my two main core ways of using law of attraction. Like I said, a lot of people use meditation. I do to an extent, but I'm not the best at it. It just doesn't connect as well for me. I've used psychics and mediums before. I have one really good one here in Carmel that I've used for 8 years. Occasionally I'll experiment with others just to learn about what's going on the other side. And so much of that is like a learning experience and trying to process other viewpoints and avenues. I think with spirituality, so many people become so open to trying other things, trying different things in the spiritual realm. And what works, when you find what works for you, is a really great tool. And there's a lot of comfort, behind it too, knowing that journal writing or doing vision boards or even photography, that a lot of the things that you photograph, are things that could come out in your life later. So those are my two big modes for law of attraction creating. And then how that all comes together is, I'm going to borrow here for a second my book, the one I gave you, is I see license plates. So I'll be having a thought, for instance, this book is called Go Bike and Other Signs from the Universe. And when I know I'm on the right track with my manifesting is when I see signs from the universe, and they come in the form of license plates. When I first realized this was about 8 years ago. I was driving home from a coffee shop after working on the book, and it was a beautiful day in January, and I was debating going for a bike ride when I got home. And I turned the corner, and I ended up behind an SUV with the license plate, Go Bike. I was like, okay, I'll go bike. And that's when it first really hit me, like, this is kind of interesting. I had just gone through my awakening and was more open to seeing these things, but that was the first license plate sign that was just like literally in my face. So I did go for a bike ride, and I'm pretty sure I saw at least one other license plate sign while I was on that ride that day. And ever since then, that's just been my mode of information from the universe comes to me through license plate. And I guarantee you, each one of you will probably see a significant license plate within the next week now that I've brought this up. One time I was, in the stories in here, one time I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone about writing, and this was back when blogs just started to become the in thing for everybody to have a blog. And she was like, what's the purpose of having one? Now I'm at home on the phone, and she's driving, down the road while she's talking to me using her hands-free. And we're talking about the purpose of blogs and how important they are. And she's like, wait, you're not going to believe this. You won't believe the license plate I just saw. I said, oh, yes, I will. Try me. And the license plate she saw was right on, except they spelled it W-R-I-T-E, on. And I knew, that was a huge sign to me. One, that license plates still find me even when I'm at home. And two, that I was right on about the blogs, and in the right sense of the W-R-I-T-E. So that was one of the other earlier signs that I got through the license plates. So when you find, some people get feathers, some people get pennies, some people get bird, a certain color bird or a flower as their sign from their loved ones on the other side. But for me, it's always been license plates. So anyway, does anybody have any questions? I know we're all running a little tight here today, but does anyone here use journal writing for manifesting?
No, but I do affirmations, but I like that idea of journaling those affirmations.
Yeah.
And I also do the vision board, which is really, I just had a vision board party at the end of last year.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It was really a lot of fun. And I gathered all these magazines and gathered some friends, and we did a vision board party.
Oh, that's a fabulous idea. Good for you.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing about
And I find pennies all the time.
you find pennies all the time.
Yeah, it's funny to see
Pennies up from
that.
heaven.
Pennies are from heaven.
Do you remember what you were thinking when you saw
No,
that?
I've never. No.
If Okay, so now you want to start making that connection. When you see a penny, think about what you were just thinking about. And then you'll see, I mean, even like me when I would see the Pilgrim license plate, I was like, why am I seeing Pilgrim? That doesn't make sense. It must be for somebody else. But then when I ended up doing the book signing at Pilgrim's Way, I was like, oh, of course. Okay, so you don't always know why. Or even whatever you're thinking when you see those pennies might be shown to you later in that day.
And I always pick them up and I always say, oh, pennies from heaven.
And so then you continually to manifest finding pennies because you appreciate it and you recognize it as well. So that's part of the law of attraction and manifestation, is appreciating and recognizing what, you know, when you do find it. The other kind of journal that I'll mention real quick are dream journals. I get a lot of precognitive dreams, and I'm in the habit of trying to write them down as well. Usually they say to have a separate dream journal from your regular journal. It's easier to go through than trying to remember when you had a dream. But that would be another good thing if you guys, any of you are big on dreams, and especially if those have that come true, like some of mine do.
Another one too is the gratitude journal. Gratitude
journals, which are kind of the opposite of the affirmation. An affirmation is you're writing down what you want to manifest. And then the gratitude journal is to be grateful for what you did receive. And of course, keep in mind that anything that you're affirming, you need to take the action to. I mean, if I write every day, I'm a famous photographer, but I'm not outside taking pictures or inside taking pictures even, obviously that's not going to happen. So you have to obviously take the action to go along with your affirmations. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. I really enjoyed meeting you all and being here today.